The rain beat against the car window, blurring everything outside. I held my duffel bag close, my hands tight around it. At 17, I should have been focused on school or hanging out with friends, but instead, I was heading into something scary. My father had sold me to pay off his debts. The driver was quiet, a big guy with a scar on his face just driving through the night. My father had borrowed money from the Osorio family, and he couldn't pay it back. They're powerful people, known for their wealth and influence. Big houses, fancy cars, and connections everywhere. Their charity events hide their real business. It's just for a while, my dad had said, not looking at me as he signed the papers. You'll work there and help out. But I knew it was more than that. I was the payment. The car pulled up to a huge mansion, lit up against the rain. Guards stood outside watching everything. The driver pulled me out and took me inside. The entrance was grand, with chandeliers and nice rugs, but it felt cold. Ilara Osorio, the madam of the house, was lounged on a velvet chair, her silver hair perfect, pearls choking her neck, and a dress that probably cost a fortune. Her eyes, cold, piercing blue, locked onto me, sizing me up like I was livestock at auction. She is the brain behind the Osorio machine, elegant and ruthless. She circled me slowly, her heels clicking on the marble like countdown ticks. So this is the collateral, she said, her voice smooth as silk but cutting like glass. I kept my eyes on the floor, my heart slamming against my ribs. She looked me over carefully. You're here because of your father's debt, she said calmly. You'll work, clean, serve, follow rules. Do well or there will be problems. I nodded, too scared to speak. A servant showed me to a small room downstairs. No windows, just a bed and a dresser. I sat there, hearing cars outside, feeling alone. This was my new life. That night, sleep was a stranger. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying my father's betrayal over and over. The loneliness hit me hard, a hollow ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I was alone in this world of excess, where everything screamed wealth. But it was all a trap. A golden cage designed to break people like me. I woke before the sun, scrubbing floors until my hands cracked and bled, serving meals I could only dream of tasting. The dining room was a stage for Ilara's performances, where she hosted politicians and tycoons, their laughter fake and echoing. Her husband, Mr. Desmond Osorio, was no different from her. In his opinion, his wife is always right. I moved like a shadow, refilling glasses, clearing plates, invisible until I wasn't. Madame Ilara's cruelty started small, chipping away at me like water on stone. A snapped order, a glare that made me shrink. Faster, boy, she'd hiss if I lagged. One night, I spilled a drop of coffee on her napkin during a dinner with guests. Her eyes flashed, and later, in the kitchen's privacy, she grabbed my arm, twisting them until bruises bloomed. Learn your place, she whispered, her breath hot on my face. I cried in agony and hid the marks under sleeves, but they throbbed like reminders. Lowering my eyes became second nature, flinching at her voice a reflex. The loneliness grew, a constant weight as I watched the family's life from the edges. Parties with champagne rivers, guests arriving in helicopters, all while I faded further into nothing. Out of the two ruthless mafias living in the Osorio mansion, Lucas Osorio was another name held in reverence. The heir of the Osorios studying abroad, learning how to rule this dark kingdom. He's sharpening his claws, Ilara would say to visitors, her pride sharp. To me he was irrelevant, another mafia being bred in secret. 3 years dragged by in that cage. I grew taller, leaner from the work, but my eyes shadowed deeper with the pain I buried. Bruises came and went, but the scars inside stayed. I survived by watching, learning the house's rhythms, the hidden doors, the guards' whispers about rivals scheming. The Osorio wealth was a blade, cutting down enemies while trapping their own. One fall evening, as I polished silver in the dim light of the kitchen, Madame Ilara glided in. The heir returns soon, she announced, her smile not touching her eyes. Make sure everything's perfect. Lucas hates flaws. The whole house was busy getting ready for Lucas's return. Maids cleaned rooms that were already spotless. Chefs worked in the big kitchen making food that smelled expensive. I was right in the middle of it, carrying boxes, scrubbing floors and helping wherever they told me to. Madame Alara walked through the halls like she owned every inch of them. She stopped me in the hallway one afternoon. "Noah," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Lucas is coming home tomorrow. Everything has to be perfect. Don't give me a reason to be disappointed." I nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." That night, I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling. All I knew was that I was stuck here, paying off a debt that never seemed to get smaller. The next morning, the staff lined up outside the front doors. I stood at the end, hands behind my back, trying to stay invisible. The black car rolled up slowly. Guard stepped out first. Then Madame Alara, looking perfect as always, stood inches away to welcome her son. Lucas stepped out of the expensive Rolls-Royce and everywhere went silent. He was taller than I expected. Dark hair, sharp suit, and a striking handsome face. He looked at each of us like he was checking a list. When his eyes reached me, they stayed for a second longer than the others. I looked down fast. He didn't say anything to anyone. Just gave his mother a small nod and walked inside. In the days after, Lucas settled in quietly. I saw him in the halls, on the phone, or sitting in meetings with important men. He never spoke to me directly. He acted like I wasn't there, which was fine with me. I kept my head down and did my work. The dining room was full of guests. Men in expensive suits, women in nice dresses. I was serving wine. My hands were tired from cleaning all morning, and when I reached for a guest's glass, I tipped it. Just a drop landed on the white tablecloth. The room went quiet. Madame Alara smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. "Clumsy fool," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she stood up, grabbed the front of my shirt, and made me kneel right there. "Apologize properly." I did. My face burned. The guests watched. Some looked away. One man even laughed a little. Later, when the guests were gone, she pulled me into the kitchen. The slap came fast and hard. My lips split. I tasted blood. "Don't ever embarrass me again," she said. I cleaned the cut in the small mirror in my room and covered it with a bandage. I told myself it was nothing new. But inside, something felt different now. Lucas was home. And I had caught him watching me from the doorway when Madame Alara grabbed me during lunch. He didn't say anything, but he saw it all. I didn't know what Lucas thought of me yet, but I could feel his eyes on me more often now. Not cruel like his mother's. Just watching. Lucas had been home for a week and the house felt different. Not louder or busier, but heavier. Like everyone was waiting to see what he would do next. I kept doing my job the same way, cleaning, serving, staying out of the way. But I could feel his eyes on me now. Not all the time, but often enough that it made my stomach twist. Once when I was wiping down the long dining table, I looked up and caught him watching from the doorway. He didn't look away. He just stood there for a second, then turned and walked off. I told myself it was nothing. He was the heir. He was probably just making sure everything in the house was running right. Still, it made me nervous. I started moving faster when I knew he was nearby. Kept my head lower. Made sure my sleeves covered the faint yellow bruise Madame Alara had left on my wrist 2 days earlier. One afternoon I was in the garage polishing the cars. I was working on the black Bentley when I heard footsteps. Lucas walked in, hands in his pockets, looking at the rows of expensive cars like he was checking inventory. I straightened up right away. "Sorry, sir. I can come back later." He shook his head once. "Keep going." So I did. I kept wiping the hood, but my hands felt shaky. He walked slowly around the car, stopping on the other side. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he spoke. "How long have you been here?" 3 years, sir." He nodded like he already knew. His eyes moved to my arm, to the place where the sleeve had ridden up a little. I pulled it down fast. "Does she still hit you?" he asked quietly. I froze. The question was so direct it knocked the air out of me. I didn't know what to say. Lying felt dangerous. Telling the truth felt worse. "It's not that bad," I muttered. Lucas didn't answer. He just looked at me a little longer, then turned and left the garage without another word. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the way he asked the question. Not angry. Not mocking, just straight. Like he actually wanted to know. Part of me wanted to believe it meant something. Another part knew better. He was Lucas Osorio. I was the boy his mother bought to clean the floors. Nothing good ever came from people like him noticing people like me. The next day the house was tense for a different reason. I heard the guards talking about trouble with another family, the Johnsons. Something about a truck that never made it to the port. Madame Alara was on edge. She snapped at everyone including me. When I brought her coffee too late, she slapped the cup out of my hand. The hot liquid splashed across the floor. "Clean it," she said. I dropped to my knees and started wiping. Lucas walked past the open door right then. He stopped for half a second. Our eyes met. He didn't say anything, but the look on his face wasn't blank anymore. There was something else there. Something I couldn't read. Later that evening, I was carrying a stack of clean towels up the back stairs when I almost ran into him. We both stopped at the same time. My shoulder brushed his arm. Just for a moment. The contact was small, but it felt loud in the quiet hallway. "Sorry, sir," I whispered, stepping back fast. Lucas didn't move. For a second I thought he was going to say something. Instead, he just gave a small nod and kept walking. I stood there after he left, heart beating too hard. I didn't understand what was happening. But I knew one thing for sure. Lucas Osorio had started noticing me. And I wasn't sure if that was going to make my life easier or a whole lot more dangerous. The morning Lucas left, the mansion felt colder. He didn't announce his departure publicly. I only learned about it because I happened to be arranging documents in the study when I overheard the details. It was a 2-day business trip. I told myself it didn't matter. He was the heir. His world was contracts, alliances, expansion. Mine was polished floors and silent obedience. But when I watched his car disappear beyond the gates, I felt it. I was missing his presence already. The first day passed quietly. Madame Alara moved through the halls with her usual elegance. Staff performed their duties. Meals were served. Security rotated in seamless shifts. On the surface, everything was normal. But I had lived here long enough to understand that. When things were calm around Madame Alara, it meant she was thinking. And when she was thinking, someone would suffer. I didn't realize that someone would be me. It was late afternoon when a maid approached me in the west corridor. "Madam wishes to see you." Those words always carried the weight of a sentence. I set down the tray I was holding and followed the maid in silence. Her private study was dimly lit despite the daylight outside. Heavy curtains filtered the sun into thin, golden slivers. She sat behind her desk, posture immaculate, a glass of untouched tea beside her. She didn't tell me to sit. She never did. I stood a few feet away, hands clasped behind my back. "Close the door." I obeyed. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. For several seconds she said nothing. She simply looked at me, studying and calculating. "You've grown bold," she said finally. My stomach tightened. "I don't understand, madam." Her gaze sharpened. "Do not insult my intelligence." I swallowed. "I saw you speaking to my son some days ago." My pulse began to race. "How dare you?" Her voice didn't rise. It hardened. "How dare you initiate familiarity with him?" "I didn't," I said quickly. "Whenever we met, it was coincidence. I never meant anything." Her expression darkened. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" I shook my head immediately. "You forget your place." The words sliced cleanly. "You are here because your father was incompetent. Because I allowed you to remain under this roof. And now you presume to position yourself near my son?" I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "No, madam. I would never try to get close to him. I don't mean anything to him." The moment the words left my mouth, I wished I could take them back. Because something flickered in her gaze. Silence stretched. And then she leaned back in her chair. Very well. Her calmness frightened me more than her anger ever had. She pressed a small button on her desk. 2 guards entered within seconds. I had never seen them look at me the way they did now. "Discipline him," she said smoothly. "Until I am satisfied." My heart dropped. I barely had time to process the words before one of them grabbed my arm. "Take him to the lower wing," she added, cutting me off. "No food, no water." The guards didn't hesitate. They dragged me out of the study. The hallway blurred past as panic set in. "Please," I tried once more. A fist struck my ribs before I could finish. The air left my lungs in a broken gasp. Pain exploded through me. They didn't speak as they beat me. Just calculated force. A blow to my stomach. Another to my back. I crumpled to the marble floor, but they pulled me up again. My vision swam. Each hit felt deliberate, not chaotic rage but controlled punishment. My cries echoed down the empty corridor, swallowed quickly by thick walls and expensive silence. No one came. When they were finished, I could barely stand. One of them shoved me forward. I stumbled. My knees hit the floor again. They dragged me the rest of the way. Not to my usual room, but to an older storage chamber in the lower wing, a windowless space rarely used anymore. The air inside was stale. They threw me inside. My body hit the floor hard. The door slammed shut. And then, darkness. I don't know how long I lay there before I started crying. Quiet tears slipped down the sides of my face. I curled slightly onto my side, pressing my palm against my stomach. I told myself to stay conscious, to count seconds. But time in darkness moves differently. At some point I realized I was shivering. Not from cold but fear. Lucas was already gone for a day. The air felt heavier as hours passed. My throat burned with dryness. I tried to stand. The room tilted violently. I collapsed back down. My body began to ache in ways deeper than bruises. Hunger clawed at me. My lips cracked from thirst. I called out once. No answer, called again but nothing. Eventually I stopped trying. I thought about my father. About how he had stood there silently while I was handed over. I wondered if he ever thought about me now. Or if I had become easier to forget. When the dizziness worsened, I tried to sit up again. The effort drained what little strength I had left. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the taste of dust in my mouth. When Lucas returned, I wasn't there to see it. He came back earlier than scheduled. Late evening. He went straight to his room first. That much I know because the maid who usually brought him dinner mentioned it in hushed tones later. He didn't see me at dinner. Didn't see me in the corridors. Didn't see me polishing silver or carrying trays. Apparently he asked, "Where's Noah?" The maid hesitated. She didn't dare tell him. Perhaps she feared Madame's wrath more than his concern. Maybe he retired early, she told him. That night, I drifted in and out of darkness. My body felt heavy. My thoughts blurred. Then finally I heard footsteps. Closer than before. More deliberate. The door burst open. Light flooded the room so suddenly it hurt. Through blurred vision I saw Lucas, standing in the doorway. His expression shifted in an instant. From irritation to confusion. To something far darker. He crossed the room in seconds. I felt his hands on my shoulders. Warm, urgent. "Noah?" he called out. I tried to focus on his face. His jaw clenched when he saw the bruises. The dried blood at the corner of my mouth. My cracked lips. His breathing changed. Not panicked but controlled fury. He lifted me carefully as if afraid I might break further. Pain flared through my ribs but I couldn't find the strength to react. The world tilted as he carried me out of the room. I caught brief glimpses of hallway ceilings passing above us. Staff frozen in shock. Guards stepping aside. No one dared speak. He didn't ask questions. He didn't shout. He moved with terrifying precision. Straight through the mansion. Out the front doors to his car. The gates opened without delay. And as consciousness slipped from me again, I felt his grip tighten slightly. The last thing I heard before everything faded was his voice. Low, lethal. "Prepare the car, let's take him to the hospital." And then, darkness swallowed me whole. Consciousness returned to me in fragments. I did not wake all at once. I surfaced slowly as if rising from deep water. The first thing I noticed was the softness beneath my body. It was not the hard marble floor of the storage room. It was not the thin mattress in my windowless quarters. It was something steady and comfortable. Then I heard the sound. A slow, rhythmic beeping. I forced my eyes open. The ceiling above me was white. The air smelled clean, sterile. There was a faint hum of machines nearby. For a moment, I did not understand where I was. My body felt heavy and distant as though it did not fully belong to me. When I tried to move, pain spread sharply across my ribs. A quiet sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. That was when I saw him. Lucas was seated beside the bed. He was not dressed in his usual perfect composure. His jacket had been removed. His sleeves were slightly creased and there were faint shadows beneath his eyes. He looked as though he had not rested. He was watching me. When our eyes met, something in his expression shifted. He leaned forward slightly and told me to rest. His voice was calm, but there was a firmness underneath it. I became aware of the bandages wrapped around my torso. There was a drip fixed to my hand, feeding clear fluid into my veins. My lips felt dry and the split on my skin tightened whenever I swallowed. A doctor entered the room shortly after I woke. He examined me carefully and spoke to Lucas in measured tones. I listened quietly, staring at the ceiling while they talked over me. The doctor explained that I had sustained blunt injuries but no fractures. He said my body was severely dehydrated and weakened from lack of food. Then he mentioned something else. I had developed stomach ulcers. The words settled heavily in the air. The doctor explained that prolonged stress and irregular meals had likely caused the condition. He said I needed rest, consistent nutrition, and most importantly, a safe environment. He made it clear that if I continued living in a place where harm was possible, the damage could worsen. Lucas did not interrupt him. He did not argue. He simply listened, his face unreadable but tense. When the doctor left, silence filled the room. I felt tears slide from the corners of my eyes before I realized I was crying. I tried to turn my face away, ashamed of my weakness. I told him softly that I could return to the mansion once I recovered. I told him that I would be more careful. I insisted that I still needed to work to repay my father's debt. Lucas did not accept that. He refused to let me go back. "I'm getting you a new place," he continued. "Somewhere away from that house." My heart skipped painfully. His tone was controlled, but there was no hesitation in it. He told me that the debt did not matter. He would handle it himself. I stared at him, unable to understand how someone could dismiss something that had defined my entire existence for 3 years. I told him it was not his responsibility. I told him that it was my father's mistake. He answered simply that I was not collateral. "No amount is worth this torture." Those words broke something inside me. For years, I had felt like nothing more than a repayment plan in human form. Hearing someone deny that truth felt overwhelming. The tears came harder and I could not stop them. Lucas moved closer to the bed. He did not speak much. He did not offer grand reassurances. Instead, he gently wiped the tears from my face with his thumb. His touch was careful, almost hesitant, as if he was afraid I might shatter under pressure. When the nurse brought food, I realized how hungry I still was. The tray placed before me was unlike anything I had been given before. The meal was warm and thoughtfully prepared. Lucas adjusted the bed so I could sit upright. He stayed beside me while I ate. He did not rush me or look away. He simply remained there, ensuring I finished every bite. After I finished, exhaustion began to pull at me again. My body felt heavy, but it was no longer the weight of despair. It was the heaviness of being allowed to rest. Lucas adjusted the blanket around my shoulders. His movements were slow and deliberate. I thanked him quietly. He did not respond immediately. Instead, he looked at me in a way that made my breathing unsteady. Then, for the first time since I had known him, he smiled. It softened the sharpness of his features and changed him entirely. My heart reacted before I could control it. It began to beat faster, almost painfully so. I remained in the hospital after Lucas left that morning. He told me there were matters he needed to handle at home. He did not elaborate and I did not ask. I already knew what waited for him inside those tall iron gates and marble corridors. Madame Malera would not allow anything to pass without question. She would not ignore the fact that her son had carried me out of the mansion himself. She would demand answers. And I knew her well enough to understand that she would ask him why he concerned himself with someone like me. A poor, worthless boy whose existence had only ever been tied to debt. The thought sat heavily in my chest all day. He did not return that evening. The hospital room felt too quiet. I had grown used to the constant tension of the mansion, the sharp sounds of heels against marble floors, the murmurs of staff who spoke only in whispers, the way silence itself felt like surveillance. But here, there was nothing except the faint hum of machines and the distant movement of nurses in the hallway. That night, I managed to stand on my own. My legs were weak, but they held me. I walked slowly toward the window and rested my hand against the cool glass. The sky was clear. Stars scattered across it like fragments of broken glass. For 3 years, I had slept in a room without windows. I had forgotten what the night sky looked like. I stared at it for a long time, wondering what Lucas was doing at that very moment. Was he arguing with his mother? Was she furious? Had she reminded him of legacy and power and reputation? Had she told him that boys like me were disposable? I lowered my head. No matter what happened between them, I knew one thing. Madame Malera would not let this go easily. The next morning passed slowly. I tried not to hope too much. Hope had always been dangerous for someone like me. It created expectations that life rarely fulfilled. But when the door to my room opened again the following day, my breath caught. Lucas stepped inside. He looked composed, calm and immaculately dressed as always. But there was something lighter about him. Something resolved. He was smiling. He told me that things had been sorted out. He did not give details. He did not speak of arguments or consequences. He simply said that if I felt strong enough, he wanted to take me somewhere. My heart began to race. That afternoon I was discharged. Walking out of the hospital felt unreal. The sunlight was brighter than I remembered. The air felt different against my skin. Lucas walked beside me, steady and close, as though prepared to catch me if I stumbled. Instead of returning to the mansion, he drove me into the city. We stopped in front of a boutique unlike any place I had ever entered. The windows displayed tailored suits, soft sweaters, polished shoes, and fabrics that looked too expensive to touch. I hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of how little I belonged in places like that. Lucas did not hesitate. He led me inside. He selected jackets that fit my shoulders perfectly. Shirts in colors I had never dared to wear. Shoes that did not hurt my feet. He bought more than I thought necessary. I kept glancing at the total, at the staff, at him, waiting for someone to remind me that this was temporary. That this generosity came with conditions. But it did not. When we finally left, the car was filled with neatly packaged bags. I felt overwhelmed in a way that had nothing to do with fear. We drove further out of the city. When the car stopped again, it was in front of a modest but beautiful house. It was not a mansion. It did not have iron gates or guards stationed outside. It was simple, peaceful. Sunlight reflected off its windows. Lucas told me it was mine. I stepped out of the car slowly. Inside, everything had already been prepared. There was furniture. A clean bedroom with wide windows. A kitchen stocked with ingredients. Curtains that allowed light to pour in instead of shutting it out. It did not feel like a cage. I did not realize I was crying until my vision blurred. The emotion rose so quickly that I could not contain it. I turned toward Lucas, and before I could stop myself, I wrapped my arms around him. I held him tightly. For a second he seemed surprised. Then his arms came around me in return, firm and protective. I cried into his shoulder, not out of pain but out of disbelief. He allowed it. He did not pull away. When I finally stepped back, embarrassed by my reaction, he told me to start afresh. He asked what I wanted to do with my life. No one had ever asked me that before. The question itself felt revolutionary. I told him that I wanted to bake. I confessed that I loved making cakes and pastries, that during my time in the mansion kitchen, those were the only moments I felt calm. He listened carefully. And just like that, it was decided. Within a week, everything changed. A shop opened not far from my new home. It was beautifully designed, warm and inviting, with glass displays and soft lighting. My name was written elegantly on the sign outside. Inside, ovens were installed, shelves stocked, and equipment arranged with precision. Lucas had done it quietly, efficiently, without asking for anything in return. He gave me extra money for upkeep. He assured me that his mother would never disturb me again. His voice was firm when he said it, and I believed him. Before he left that day, he handed me a mobile phone. It was sleek and new. He saved his number in it personally and told me that if I ever needed anything, I should call him. The weight of that trust overwhelmed me. Without thinking, I dropped to my knees in gratitude. He immediately pulled me up. There was no anger in his expression, only quiet disapproval. He did not want me bowing to him. He did not want me kneeling. Weeks passed. Then months. The bakery flourished beyond my expectations. Customers came frequently. I learned to smile without fear. I learned to breathe without calculating consequences. But Lucas did not visit. I told myself he was busy. He had an empire to manage. Meetings, deals, responsibilities far beyond anything I could imagine. He belonged to a world of wealth and power. I began to understand the distance between us. He had helped me. He had saved me. But he existed on a different planet entirely. It was foolish to imagine anything beyond that. And yet, I had fallen for him. My heart had chosen him, but I never said it aloud. One evening, just as I was closing the shop, a sleek new car pulled up outside. It was flashy, expensive, and unmistakably his. Lucas stepped out. He looked breathtaking. His suit was dark and perfectly tailored. His hair was slightly tousled by the wind. Confidence radiated from him effortlessly. He walked toward me with something in his hand. A bouquet of flower. He held it out to me casually as though it were nothing significant. But to me it felt monumental. I accepted it with hands that trembled slightly. We sat outside the shop that evening, talking and laughing in a way that felt natural. Not master and servant. Not heir and collateral. Just two people sharing quiet time. The sunset painted everything in gold. At one point, overwhelmed by happiness I did not know how to contain, I leaned forward and pressed a quick peck against his cheek. The moment lasted barely a second. When I realized what I had done, heat rushed to my face. I looked away immediately, embarrassed. Lucas chuckled softly. The sound eased my tension. After a while he asked if I planned to visit my father. The question stilled me. I told him that in my heart I no longer had a father. A responsible parent would never sell his child to settle a debt the child never created. The wound of that betrayal had long since hardened into something colder. As I spoke, emotion rose again. Lucas reached for my hand. He did not interrupt my pain. He simply held my fingers gently and allowed me to lean against him. My head rested against his shoulder. The steady rhythm of his breathing grounded me. Then, in an attempt to lighten the heaviness, he began telling small jokes, dry, unexpected comments that caught me off guard. Despite myself, I laughed. The sadness did not disappear, but it loosened its grip. As night settled around us, Lucas Osorio had become the center of that new life. I did not know what the future held. But in that moment, under dim streetlights and fading warmth, I allowed myself to rest my head against him without fear. And for now, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel for more BL stories. Thanks for watching.